moment Admiral Fletcher saw my sister's tattoo, I knew my lies were about to destroy everything I'd built with the woman I loved. I'm standing there at this perfect lakeside barbecue, watching my girlfriend Naya's face light up with pride as she introduces me to her grandfather as her Navy SEAL boyfriend. And all I can think about is how in about 30 seconds, my entire world is going to explode. Before we dive in, tell us where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. Let me back up and tell you how I got here. My name is Xander Hayes. I'm 28 years old. I build houses for a living in Phoenix, and for the past 6 months I've been living the biggest lie of my life. See, when I first met Naya Winters at a coffee shop downtown, she mentioned her family's military background, how her grandfather was some big-shot admiral, how much she respected service members. And me, being the idiot I am, instead of just being honest about who I was, I told her I was a Navy SEAL. The lie started small. Just a little white lie to impress a beautiful nurse who clearly had a thing for military guys. But then she wanted to hear stories. Then she wanted to introduce me to her military friends. Then she started talking about bringing me home to meet the family, especially Grandpa Fletcher, who apparently served for 30 years and still had connections all over the Navy. So here I am, 6 months later at the Winters family lake house in Michigan, sweating through my polo shirt while Naya beams at me like I'm some kind of war hero. Her grandfather, Admiral Fletcher, this distinguished 70-year-old man with steel-gray eyes that seem to see right through you, is walking over to shake my hand. And that's when I see her, my sister Celeste, 24 years old, genuine Marine Corps veteran, 2 tours in Afghanistan, and she's walking across the deck wearing a tank top that shows off her anchor tattoo. The tattoo she earned through actual blood, sweat, and sacrifice while I was back home learning about drywall installation. Celeste doesn't know about my lie. Nobody in my family knows. She thinks she's just meeting my new girlfriend's family at a nice Labor Day weekend gathering. She has no idea that every story I've told Naya about military service. I stole from her letters home, her late-night phone calls when the nightmares got bad, her proud moments and her dark ones. Naya grabs my arm, her eyes sparkling. "Grandpa, this is Xander, the SEAL I've been telling you about." Admiral Fletcher extends his hand, and his grip is firm, measuring. "Son, it's an honor. Naya tells me you served in Syria." I shake his hand, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes, sir, 3 deployments. Classified operations mostly." That's when Celeste looks over, confused. She knows our family history. She knows Dad worked factory jobs his whole life, that Mom cleaned offices to pay the bills, that neither of us had the college grades or connections to get into elite military programs. She knows I barely made it through community college. Admiral Fletcher is still holding my hand, still looking at me with those penetrating eyes. "Classified, huh? What unit were you with?" Behind him, Celeste is walking closer, and I can see the exact moment she overhears the conversation. Her face changes. The confusion turns to something else. Recognition. Horror. Because Celeste knows me better than anyone, and she knows I'm not capable of the things I'm about to claim I did. More importantly, she knows the stories I'm about to tell belong to her. To understand how deep I was in this mess, you need to know how it all started. 8 months ago, I was working on a hospital renovation project when I met Naya in the cafeteria. She was this incredible woman, smart and compassionate, with these warm brown eyes that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. We started talking, and somehow the conversation turned to her family. She told me about her grandfather, this decorated admiral who'd served his country for 30 years, how he was her hero, how she had such respect for people who served. That should have been my cue to talk about honest work, about building things with my hands, about the pride I take in construction. Instead, when she asked what I did, something inside me broke. Maybe it was insecurity, maybe it was seeing how her eyes lit up when she talked about military service. But I heard myself say I was a Navy SEAL. The reaction was immediate. Her whole face changed. She looked at me with this newfound respect, this admiration I'd never seen from anyone before. She started asking questions about my service, and I panicked. That night, I spent hours online researching SEAL training, memorizing terminology, learning about different units and operations. But my real education came from Celeste. My sister had been sending letters and emails for years, sharing her experiences from boot camp, from Afghanistan, from the difficult transition back to civilian life. I had every detail of her service memorized because I cared about her, because I was proud of her. Now I was twisting that pride into deception. The lie grew legs. Naya wanted to hear my stories, so I told her about Celeste's convoy attacks, calling them my own missions. When she asked about my training, I described Celeste's descriptions of Marine boot camp, adapting them to fit SEAL mythology. Every conversation pushed me deeper into this fictional version of myself. Naya started bringing me around her friends, introducing me as her Navy SEAL boyfriend. Her co-workers at the hospital would thank me for my service. People would buy me drinks when they found out I was military. The weight of their respect felt incredible and crushing at the same time. Then came the phone calls with her grandfather. Admiral Fletcher would call Naya every Sunday, and she'd put him on speaker so he could talk to me. These weren't casual conversations. This man knew the military inside and out. He'd ask about specific bases, about training protocols, about people he thought I should know. I'd researched enough to give basic answers, but I could feel him testing me, probing for details that only real experience could provide. 3 weeks ago, Naya announced that her grandfather wanted to meet me in person. She was so excited, planning this whole Labor Day weekend at the family lake house. She kept talking about how proud Grandpa Fletcher would be to meet another warrior, how much it would mean to have his approval of our relationship. That's when I knew I was trapped. I couldn't disappoint her, couldn't break her heart by admitting everything was a lie. So I invited Celeste, thinking somehow having a real veteran there would help me navigate the weekend. I never imagined it would make everything so much worse. The first crack appeared during cocktails on the deck. Admiral Fletcher was asking me about SEAL team operations while Naya hung on every word, her hand resting proudly on my arm. "So you were based out of Coronado?" he asked, swirling his bourbon. "You must know Commander Rodriguez from Team 5. My stomach dropped. I had no idea who Commander Rodriguez was, but I couldn't admit that. "Rodriguez, yes, sir. Good man." The Admiral's eyes narrowed slightly. "Interesting. Rodriguez has been stationed in Norfolk for the past 3 years, working with Team 2. I felt sweat beating on my forehead. "Right. I meant when he was at Coronado previously." The Admiral nodded slowly, but I could see him filing away my mistake. Meanwhile, Celeste was charming everyone at the other end of the deck. Naya's aunt was asking her about her service, and I watched in horror as my sister started sharing real stories about her deployments. "The hardest part wasn't the combat," she was saying. "It was coming home and trying to explain to people what it was really like over there." Naya's cousin, a college kid studying military history, perked up. "What branch were you in?" "Marines," Celeste replied. "2 tours in Afghanistan." The kid's eyes lit up. "That's so cool." "Your brother must have so many stories too, being a SEAL and all." I saw Celeste's face change. She glanced over at me, confusion written all over her features. She knew our family history better than anyone. She knew I'd never served a day in my life. Admiral Fletcher wasn't done with his questions. "Tell me about Hell Week, son." That's something every SEAL remembers in vivid detail. I started stammering through some generic description I'd memorized from online forums, but he cut me off. "Which Buds class were you?" The number popped out before I could think. "Class 285, sir." He paused mid-sip. "Class 285. I was at that graduation ceremony. Small class, only had about 40 guys make it through. Don't recall seeing you there." My mouth went dry. Across the deck, I could hear Celeste describing a firefight that I'd told Naya was my own experience just last month. The walls were closing in from both sides. "You know what?" Admiral Fletcher said, standing up. "Why don't we head to my study after dinner? I've got some old photos and maps from various operations. Be interesting to see if we know any of the same places." That's when I knew I was completely screwed. There was no way I could sit in a room with this man and pretend to recognize classified locations I'd never seen. But worse than that, I could see Celeste watching me from across the deck, her military-trained mind putting together pieces that didn't fit. Her brother, who'd barely graduated high school, claiming to be an elite warrior. The conversation continued around me, but all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat and the ticking clock of my inevitable exposure. I couldn't take it anymore. While everyone was inside helping with dinner preparations, I grabbed Celeste's arm and pulled her toward the lake. "We need to talk, now." She yanked her arm away, her Marine training evident in her defensive stance. "What the hell is going on, Xander?" That college kid just told me you're supposedly a Navy SEAL. Since when? My hands were shaking. The words came out in a rush. Sel, I screwed up. I screwed up so bad and I don't know how to fix it. She stared at me, waiting. I told Naya I was a SEAL. It started as a stupid lie and now it's gone too far and I can't take it back. The look on her face was worse than anger. It was disappointment mixed with disgust. You what? Her voice was deadly quiet. You're pretending to be military? You're stealing valor? It's not like that, I pleaded. I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted her to like me. So you decided to pretend you earned what I bled for? Celeste stepped closer, and I could see the fury building in her eyes. Those stories you've been telling her, they're mine, aren't they? The convoy attack in Helmand Province, the IED that killed Sergeant Morrison. You took my experiences, my trauma, my brother's sacrifices, and you turned them into pickup lines. I felt sick. Hearing it said out loud made me realize how deeply I'd betrayed not just Naya, but my own sister. Celeste, please, I'm sorry. I know it was wrong, but I love her. I really love her. You think this is love? She hissed. You think lying to someone about who you are is love? You're not just stealing from me, Xander. You're stealing from every person who actually served. Every family who lost someone. Every veteran struggling to readjust to civilian life. I was desperate now. What am I supposed to do? If I tell her the truth, I lose everything. She'll hate me. Her family will hate me. It's over. Celeste was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the water. When she turned back to me, her voice was steel. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to march back up there and tell them the truth. All of it. Tonight. Sel, please. Tonight, Xander, or I will. She grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. You want to know what real courage looks like? It's facing the consequences of your actions. It's choosing truth even when it destroys everything you think you want. She'll leave me. Maybe she will. But if you keep lying, you'll lose her anyway, and you'll lose yourself too. Right now, you still have a chance to be the man she deserves. The real you might actually be worth loving. We stood there by the water, and I realized this was it. The moment where I either found some actual courage or lost my sister's respect forever. Dinner felt like a funeral march. I sat there pushing food around my plate while conversation flowed around me. Naya kept squeezing my hand under the table, probably thinking I was nervous about impressing her grandfather. If only she knew the truth. Admiral Fletcher stood up with his wine glass. I'd like to make a toast, he announced, and the table fell silent. To the brave men and women who serve our country with honor, sacrifice, and integrity. People like Celeste here who've earned the right to wear the uniform. Everyone raised their glasses toward my sister. She looked uncomfortable with the attention, the way real heroes always do. Thank you, sir, but I was just doing my job. Nonsense, the Admiral continued. 2 tours in Afghanistan takes real courage. He turned his steel-gray eyes on me. I'm sure your brother has similar stories from his time with the teams. The moment hung in the air like a blade. I could feel Celeste's eyes on me, could see her slight nod. This was my chance, my last chance to do the right thing. But before I could speak, Admiral Fletcher set down his glass and looked directly at Celeste. That's a beautiful anchor tattoo, by the way. Where did you get it done? Camp Pendleton, sir, right after I earned it. Earned it how? Combat deployment, sir. It's tradition in my unit. Admiral Fletcher nodded slowly, then turned to me. Interesting tradition. I don't recall SEALs having similar tattoo customs. What's your ink situation, son? My mouth went dry. I had no military tattoos because I'd never served. No anchor, no trident, no unit insignia. Nothing that would mark me as the warrior I'd pretended to be. Celeste cleared her throat. Grandpa Fletcher, there's something you should know about my brother. Celeste, don't. The words came out sharper than I intended. She looked at me with sad eyes. You had your chance, Xander. The table was dead silent now. Naya was looking between us, confusion turning to concern. What's going on? I stood up so fast my chair almost fell over. My hands were trembling, my heart hammering against my ribs. I have something to tell everyone. My voice cracked. I'm not a Navy SEAL. Naya's face went white. What do you mean? I mean, I've never served in the military. Not one day. Every story I told you, every mission, every detail about training, it was all lies. The words tumbled out in a rush. I'm a construction worker from Phoenix who was too scared to tell the woman he loved who he really was. Naya dropped her fork. The clatter seemed to echo in the silence. You're lying now. This is some kind of joke. I wish it was. I looked at Admiral Fletcher, whose face was stone. I stole my sister's stories, her experiences, her trauma. I turned her service into my own fictional heroism because I thought the real me wasn't good enough for you. Naya stood up slowly, tears starting to form. 6 months. 6 months of lies. Every single day. The silence after my confession felt like it lasted forever. Then Admiral Fletcher did something I didn't expect. He sat back down and gestured for everyone else to do the same. "Sit down, son." I stayed standing. "Sir, I understand if you want me to leave." I said, "Sit down." His voice had that military authority that made you obey without thinking. I sat. He looked around the table at his family, then back at me. "I've been in the Navy for 30 years. I've seen a lot of liars in my time, but I've also learned to recognize when someone is telling the truth, even when it's the hardest thing they'll ever do." Naya was crying now, not looking at me. "How could you do this? How could you lie about something so important?" "Because I'm a coward," I said. "Because I thought you'd never love a guy who builds houses for a living. Because I was so insecure that I convinced myself I had to be someone else to deserve you." Admiral Fletcher leaned forward. "Son, I suspected something was off the moment I shook your hand. You know the terminology. You show respect, but you don't carry yourself like a warrior. More importantly, you don't have the scars." He rolled up his sleeve, showing a jagged scar along his forearm. Shrapnel from a rocket attack in Desert Storm. He looked at Celeste. "Show him yours." Celeste hesitated, then rolled up her own sleeve, revealing a burn scar on her wrist. "IED blast. Afghanistan, 2019. Every real warrior carries marks from their service," Admiral Fletcher continued. "Physical or otherwise. You research the job, but you can't fake the journey." The drive home with Celeste was brutal. She didn't say a word for the first hour. Finally, she broke the silence. "I'm proud of you for telling the truth. But Xander, you need help. You need to figure out why you thought so little of yourself that you had to steal someone else's life." 3 months later, I was in therapy twice a week, working through years of insecurity and self-doubt. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that my lies weren't really about impressing Naya. They were about hating who I actually was. The call from Admiral Fletcher came on a Tuesday. "Son, I've been thinking about our conversation. What you did was wrong, but owning up to it took courage. Real courage. I know some veteran organizations that could use someone with construction skills. Interested in doing some real service?" That's how I ended up building wheelchair ramps for disabled veterans every weekend. It wasn't glamorous work, and nobody thanked me for my service. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was earning respect instead of stealing it. Naya called me 6 weeks later. "I've been thinking," she said. "Maybe we could try again. But this time, I want to know the real Xander Hayes." We met for coffee, and I told her everything. The real everything. About growing up poor, about feeling worthless, about finding pride in building things with my hands. She listened to all of it, and when I was done, she smiled and said, "Now I know who you really are. And I think I like him better."